going.
Put on this computer. All right. So, okay, hello everyone, and thanks for tuning in to this roundtable presentation and discussion. A quick note of reminder is that our live Q&A throughout the conference will take place on Saturday, February 13, from 3 p.m. to 3:30 p.m., that's Eastern Time, through the CAA portal. That'll give us a chance to dig a little deeper and have a conversation with you all. My name is Vuslat Demirkoparan Katsanis, and I'm very pleased to introduce this panel today, the Ministry of Postcollapse Art and Culture, Contemporary Artists and Cultural Workers Networked for Resilience Beyond the Anthropocene. A quick bit of background to the humorously named Ministry of Postcollapse Art and Culture is a curatorial project conceived in 2018 and dedicated to representing the art and artists from Eastern Europe, Western and Central Asia, and their widespread diasporas. As a not-for-profit artist-scholar-run project, MPAC's aim is to establish a network of artists and art professionals whose formative years were marked in some way by the collapse of the Soviet Union and the concomitant reshaping of various real and imagined geographical, cultural, and political borders. Humans from this highly politicized and rapidly shifting geographical space recognize the disappearance of meaning, erasures of citizenship, the exiles of people, and the literally mined landscape as a daily reality, though their voices are often omitted from narratives of the global contemporary. With its strong emphasis on diaspora, MPAC also envisions to establish a platform for articulating those migrant experiences as integral to any attempts to understand the global contemporary at large. Emerging out of worlds that no longer exist, we see the need to redefine the human beyond the Anthropocene as a basic need for survival, both politically, historically, and ecologically. It's our contention that artists and intellectuals who find themselves exiled know too well that the search for survival amongst crisis and ruin requires both solidarity and humility. It requires an acute sensitivity to our common grounding where sustainability in all of its forms is unimaginable without a sense of working together. By foregrounding human experience in light of heightened conflict and polarizing ideologies, the framework we term post-collapse emphasizes this diverse region's impact on issues of transnational subjectivity and resilience. Having traversed countries replete with historical entanglements where trauma became routine and absurdities normalized, among the questions we ask are, how do we define ourselves and our contemporary moment? How do the aesthetics of humor build resistance? How might we inhabit our new, albeit exclusionary homelands as artists and scholars who do not readily fit within an established schema? And how do the archives of the past point towards a new future? MPAC showcases new research and ongoing artistic inquiry to ask these questions and more. In this panel, I'm pleased to introduce three of MPAC's founders, bring together three founders, Turkish-American artist Ilknur Demirkoparan, Bosnian artist Mirela, Kulovic, and myself, in conversation with two art professionals whose works expand upon post-communist hypermodernities and new media interventions in the Anthropocene, Bulgarian artist Mariya Tsaneva and Bulgarian-American scholar Stefka Hristova. Before I lead the mic to you all, giving the presentation a brief biographical background to the speakers in order of presentation is Ilknur Demirkoparan, a Turkish-born American artist whose interdisciplinary practice spans painting, sculpture, installation, performance, and digital media. While her earlier work explores the bizarre and often baffling narratives of identity and otherness, her more recent practice focuses on the Turkish aesthetics and material culture. She has performed and exhibited at the Berlin Biennial Art Wiki Project 2012, Highways Performance Space and Gallery in Los Angeles, and the Far Bazaar in Cerritos. She holds an MFA in art from the California Institute of the Arts and a BA from the University of California, Riverside. Her recent residencies include Cha North in Pine Plains, New York, and Glaugau Air in Berlin, in Germany, and she's the recipient of the Andrew Mellon Foundation Max X Gluck Foundation Fellowship Awards. The next speaker is Mirela Kulovic, a painter based in Boston. She grew up in urban seaside Croatia, as well as rural Bosnia Herzegovina. These different worlds played a major part in developing Mirela's interest in the visual exploration of memory. She is fascinated by the role of trauma, imagination, forgetting, and oral narrative in building collective memory. Her artwork, spanning paintings, drawings, and text, is process-oriented and characterized by violent accidental marks, which are often accompanied by repetitive symbols, numbers, letters, and paint pouring. Her collaborative works include multiple international artistic and cultural projects that address and respond to the social, cultural, and psychological needs of distressed and displaced communities. I should mention that she's also the founder of Culture Contrast, which we might ask you about later. Third presenting is Mariya Tsaneva, born in 1988 in Sofia, Bulgaria, and graduated from the National Academy of Art in Sofia, where she specialized in design of children's environment and art education. She holds an MA in social design, arts as urban innovation from the University of Applied Arts in Vienna. And in her current PhD research, she examines the history and development of cultural centers in Bulgaria as places for civic engagement and cultural education in the 19th century. The historical transformation in cultural politics in the country can be illustrated by the evolution of the institutions and their architecture. By narrating stories of culturally significant institutions, Tsaneva's research shows the importance of contextualizing and visualizing urban change as fundamental to our societies and their resilience. Her work combines artistic research and approaches to identify social, political, and economic issues through art. Among her most recent projects is Home is Where the Herz is, and initiated by Metropole magazine Vienna, which aims to give voice to the 10 largest communities who have made Vienna their home. And last but not least is Stefka Hristova, Associate Professor of Digital Media, Humanities, and co-leader for Tech Forward Education for the 21st Century Idea Hub at Michigan Tech University. Her research examines digital media cultures, visual cultures, and digital technologies. Additional research areas include science and technology studies, media production, color and culture, and the history of technology. Among her recent works is Algorithmic Culture, How Big Data and Artificial Intelligence Are Transforming Everyday Life, an edited collection that explores the complex ways in which algorithms and big data simultaneously reshape everyday culture while perpetuating inequality and intersectional discrimination. Contributors in this volume situate issues of humanity, identity, and culture in relation to free will, surveillance, capitalism, neoliberalism, consumerism, solipsism, and creativity, offering a critique of the myriad constraints enacted by algorithms. So without further ado, I will hand over the share screen capacity to Ilknur Demirkoparan, and we will proceed in this order. Thank you.
And I will turn on my microphone. Let's see, share screen. And then, do you remember how, oops.
Yes, in the upper right.
Okay, I'm sharing the screen, but there was also a voice sound. Didn't we just do this too? Share computer sound. Okay, there we go. Just wanted to get that in there before I started. Okay, and then go into present mode. Oh, okay. Well, okay, so I'm going to have to wiggle this around while I do this. So the title of my talk is Collapsing the East-West False Dichotomy, Art as Intervention. And okay, now I'll leave that alone. So most of my work, starting from early on, has been about identity, trying to understand my own identity in time and space as a Turkish American. Arriving in America as a 10-year-old child and growing up, just first half of your childhood and then second half of your childhood being affected by different sets of experiences of migration and the immigrant experience, and also learning about your own history and culture, and then having it be exposed and retaught to you in school from a different lens and perspective was a bit baffling. So it had been, and when you start as your practice as an artist is all about trying to understand your identity, and it kind of becomes cliche, but there's this urge to try to understand who you are first, and I have to say it took me quite a while, probably about 10 years. So I started looking at a persistent trope, as I come to understand, is that this image of the Turk, which is this ambiguous identity that is caught between the East and the West, and it's been long obscured in the European imaginary. The Turk in the masculine was generally cruel and tyrannical, which was a sentiment echoed by the Webster's New Collegiate Dictionary. And Random House Dictionary agreed with their definition: cruel, brutal, or domineering man. And Oxford Dictionary claimed the Turk was a ferocious, wild, or unmanageable person. The feminine was not much better. She was assumed uneducated, blindly submissive, and existed for no other purpose than to serve, which was the stereotypical depiction. The depiction carried over to Mary Shelley's novel Frankenstein, where the two characters, the terrible Turk and his beautiful daughter, entered the story to contrast against the monster. And then, of course, this is probably the most famous depiction that somehow became the spokesperson of how Turkish people ought to be, shaped the understanding. While I was doing my research, I came across and I'm like a fanatic gamer. At some point, I was just like playing like 8 hours a day sometimes, I have to admit. I came across a video game title in 1990 that was released in 97. My introduction to it wasn't until like 2003 or 2004, I believe. And there was a group of organization named the Turks, and these are the members. The guy in the middle in the white is the boss of a company called Shinra. It's an electrical and power company. And the Turks is an organization that is an elite fighter group, but also like a secret service, but they're private and they do the bidding of the corporation. And I was like thinking, okay, so this is released in late 90s, and so the identity starts to shift from being the cruel and tyrannical and the sexual object of the female to the henchmen, the mercenaries. And I was like thinking, and this game, of course, is being released by a Japanese company, and their adaptation in a fictional world where they are no longer an ethnicity but an organization. So I started thinking a little bit more. And in the game, this is a screenshot from the original. Turk Light is an attack form that they do. They have like these really strange moves, and they say the strangest things. Being a Turk has been hard at times, but all in all, I'm glad I did it. And of course, like, I get curious and more curious, and I take it to the internet and find the fandom. This is from 2008, and of course, like, this is still going on today. People dress up as this organization, and they take photos and they go to conventions, and it's actually quite fun. So I decided to do, so before I say that, there's also the Square Enix, of course, the company, sees this fan reception and decides to release, in response, a follow-up where you are recruited as a Turk and you play the game from their perspective. Then they release a movie which is supposed to serve as more eye candy to fandom. And I think like the series continue on like 6 more iterations until finally like March 2020, there was another remake that was released. So there's like this big hype. And my response at the time was trying to understand, well, what happens when the fandom starts to embrace the villain, and it is the Japanese adaptation of the trope, where there's a failure happens, where the identity goes from being here, this is the villain that serves this purpose, to a tongue-in-cheek adaptation that doesn't take it too seriously. And that's where the fandom starts to happen. And in that was a revelation to me, where I realized there's that fantastic definition of the Turk that hijacks the reality of how a Turk ought to be and replaces it with its own definition. And that is the purpose that generally seems to happen in Western depictions of Turkish image. So I borrowed the Japanese playfulness and the tongue-in-cheek adaptation, and I come up with my own, and this is a screenshot. And this is a completely internet-based role-playing game where it follows the same rules of the characters, is mysterious. And the goal is to recruit as many people to become Turks, and only to reveal and unfold the function of the Turk through the gameplay itself. And the reason why I call them fantastic Turks is a nod to Todorov's description of the fantastic in literature, where it does not leave any metaphorical or fictional understanding of, it just hijacks the reality and you just take it as is. So years later, of course, I went back to this idea in 2016 with Are We There Yet? Because once after doing this project, I continued to see the image of Turk evolve depending on contemporary politics and its relationship with NATO and its accession talks to European Union. And you start to see the role of Turk shift further. And so in this project, Vuslat and I created an artificial holographic entity of, I don't even know what to call it really. This is kind of like a floating head called the Grand Turk. And she was modeled after Wolfgang von Kempelen, Mechanical Turk, or sometimes simply referred to as the Turk, which is usually regarded as the first automaton that played chess. And it was supposed to be unbeatable, and it was supposed to be the opponent. And again, it borrows these elements of the fantastic, and it's the opponent and formidable, and toured the world for 50 years playing against Napoleon and Edgar Allan Poe and all these people. So which was then became an inspiration source for many things like Amazon's Mechanical Turk, which is a service where you hire dirt cheap labor to work. And also inspired a lot of, this is a screenshot from Terminator. It inspired a lot of movies, including the Terminator, where the AI was the source of the humanity's destruction, and it was also called the Turk. So in this version of our version, we wanted the AI to try to understand humanity and the meanings they define to concepts of identity and ethnicity and all of these things through a fresh pair of eyes of somebody who had just come into existence a few months and rapidly and speedily trying to understand humanity. And there's an excerpt that I want to play.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. What's your name?
How are you? Grand Turk, what is your name?
Joe Risen.
Nice to meet you, Joe Risen. Where are you from?
From Los Angeles.
There are many people from Los Angeles today. They are all hungry. Are you hungry?
A little bit, yes.
Hot dogs will be served until 5 p.m. today.
That's good to know. Thank you.
You are welcome.
Would you like to ask anything else?
So depending on the interaction with the human visitor, sometimes it was some cheesy conversation about hot dogs, and sometimes it was a deep conversation, which unfortunately for the duration of this talk I can't give, but it was about humans and their needs and trying to make sense of it all from a childlike perspective, but as an AI that could potentially be this evil thing that could cause the destruction of humanity. And also self-aware of the stereotype that is given to itself, but pretending like it doesn't know. So then, after thinking a lot about identity and the way that it is seen in the West, and over the years, looking at my own country back home and seeing the political changes and the rise of political Islam that started changing the social structure of the country, I started seeing conversations on television about women's hair and to cover or not to cover, and debates on TV that you would never see before, which I thought to me was a little strange that it was new and almost alien, that like, why is this such a big deal all of a sudden? So I wanted to turn that perspective inward and try to see how this, how identity is then this hyper accentuation and this embracing as a form of a resistance, that like, okay, so we are seen as this other, and now we're going to take all of these others and hyper accentuate it. And so I did this piece called Hair is a Woman's Glory, which is a series of images of selfies, and they were inspired by the same kind of discomfort that Turkish women started feeling around the politics surrounding their bodies and their, particularly their hair, becoming a topic of obsession. So I made this piece, which looks like text. It spells saç, S-A-C, with a dot under in Turkish, which means hair, obsessively over and over and over. Saç, 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 hair, 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 hair. And just to ask the question, like, why does it matter? And it's a bit of a, again, like tongue-in-cheek response, like homage again to the chair, Joseph Kosuth's, where you have the picture of the chair, and the chair itself, and the dictionary definition. And so then I removed it, I took some selfies of myself and digitally removed my hair, and then just wrote it in as words that are calligraphic, and also a little bit of a nod to Turkish calligraphic artist, art historical reference there. And there's another one from that series. But while doing this, I started again thinking, but why hair? How does hair become so important? I understand the religious perspective and its influence, but how does it fit in the society? Like before that, what was it? What does it mean? And I came across representations of hair in Turkish rugs where the motif itself symbolized happiness and celebration of life. But if the woman used her actual hair strands and weaved it into the rug, that it meant that she wanted eternal immortality. And this was a puzzling thing to me, which got me thinking a little deeper about the significance of female hair and its power, and researched across cultures and dug deeper into Turkish mythology, and found that hair actually is that connection. It was perceived as a connection of your soul to the heavens, and it was long after you died, your hair remained. And if anybody has ever watched Jurassic Park, maybe it might be possible to bring back people at some point. So maybe they were onto something. But from that, I realized as an artist, okay, so I've been on this path to understanding my own self in time and space. And I think I'm there. I'm done. I've done everything that I could, and which opened up another phase. It was like, boom, another shift. And I started exploring Turkish aesthetics in my work. And I returned to painting after so many years. And these series are currently what I'm working on right now. And they follow the same routine of the Turkish kilims, which is a traditional craft practiced by women. It uses the abstract language to tell stories. Every symbol has a meaning. But the meaning is personal to the person who's using it, and at the same time very universal. This is my take on one of the motifs called eli belinde, hands on hip, which is a birthing position. So I take it and I digitally manipulate it and scatter it into dots and then recreate it. And after a while of redoing it, I stopped and I looked at it and I said, oh my God, that looks like a vagina. So, and I guess they were on, that was what they were depicting in this, in a very, very, very simplified form. And another one. And to sum it all up, the idea of post-collapse, how did I myself find myself there, was trying to write artist statements about what I was doing, what I had been doing, and why I was doing something so drastically different all of a sudden. Like, how do I make sense of any of this? And I started thinking and researching, and while I was on this journey, I was in Romania, in Bucharest, and I went to the Modern Art Museum and came across an exhibition of a survey from 1947 to 2007. And in it, it described how the country had seen 3 different regime changes, from monarchy to democracy to communism, and then the fall of communism. So that was actually a little bit more than 3. And in the wall text, which is a lot to read here, but in summary, was the same question. How do we fit and how do we define the Romanian art within the European contemporary? Where does it fit? Like, we understand that Europe and its artists follow a certain path and is defined as the post-war era. But something else happens like Central and Eastern Europe and Central Asia. And I consider also Turkey being sandwiched and wedged between the space as part of this. Another path is followed, and something else happens that deeply affects the practice and the way that we understand the artist. And so after while thinking, the idea, post-collapse, that's one unifying factor. And so that was how we came to understand myself and my own practice. And through reaching out to others like Mirela and Mariya, we found you, and Stefka, we see that like in our practice that we are on the same path to understanding our own contemporary and our own space that needs a new framework of understanding. And that's it. Blank screen.
Thank you very much. Yay. Really nice introduction. So up next we have Mirela Kulovic.
Do you see my
No, we don't see you sharing your screen yet.
How is that possible? You had it for a while.
Mm-hmm.
There it is.
Okay, great. So, title of my presentation is Building a Resiliency with Art and Culture in Distressed and Displaced Communities in Bosnia and Herzegovina and its diaspora. So, as Ilknur said, my art practice as well started with research of identity and everything what was happening in my life and also in communities that I grew up. And I was trying to figure out what is my art practice about. And very fast I was started to be interested in building communities and to talk with other artists who are also facing some challenges to understand their identity, also how to build the new spaces that are really needed. So some of the challenges that our artists who are from Bosnia and Herzegovina are facing is really challenges of bureaucracies and many institutions, they often do not have systematic some kind of systematic that could help artists to present and show their work. And also when you want to show in that kind of art and culture institution, it's really hard, because if you research a little bit about politics and country today, it's really divided still after around the 30 years after a recent conflict. And many young artists, they do not have a space to show their progressive or innovative practice. And also, if they want to connect with some kind of other foundation that are not in the country, like from Western Europe, there are some narratives they need to not even follow, but if there are some requests that when you are writing proposals, everything is about conflict and reconciliation, and some young artists, they are not interested in that kind of stories anymore. Also, some young artists, they are experiencing lack of knowledge when it comes with collaborating with other people, and especially in a smaller towns in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and also they do not have enough experience in that practical presentation of their work. When we speak about diaspora, like myself, who is at the moment living in Boston, USA, I really felt that I'm disconnected from my home country, because the most of my life I was living in Croatia, and then I didn't know many artists in my home country. And when I started to speak with other artists who are in the diaspora, they also wanted to connect, but they didn't know how. Also, some some artists in diaspora, they are still researching and figuring out about their identity, and also sometimes when they return back to their home country, they are still experiencing some trauma, and because some people, they didn't return back for more than 20 years. So because of all these challenges that artists are facing, I started to be interested in building in community. So 3 main projects that I started for the last 4 years are Art Center, Culture Association Contrast, and the most recent is Art Forum. So with this project, we really wanted to build the community and involve people who are from various communities, not only artists, but also young children or older people, or anyone who would be interested to connect. The main reason is to build a space where artists could explore their identity more free, and they could exchange some kind of knowledge and collaborate on projects that are interdisciplinary and that are, I like to say, crossing some boundaries of nationality or even some main narrative that are in their own family or in their own community. So these projects I started 4 years ago, and when I started Art Center, I realized I need more local people, because at that time, that was 2017, I was living in Boston, so I really needed people who would be there and who would could involve in a community project. And I succeed in organizing few events, but after that I struggled to manage that space. So a year later I started a Culture Association Contrast, and we realized that we need to be able to fund our projects. We need to register, we need to be legal, and all that things to really start to make a difference in communities. So with the Culture Association, it started as a network, but in a few months we really succeed in finding spaces, some kind of alternative spaces where we can present or speak about arts. So this is a picture of one historical place in a small town, Teshan. So we connect many different people, like writers, visual artists, publishers, actors, cultural workers, and by building that kind of network, we are brainstorming and thinking about what kind of project will bring more attention to art and culture in a smaller town. So mission of this association is really developing culture scene in smaller towns in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and we so far we really succeed to change how people are perceiving artists and culture workers. So last year I realized that there is needed even one more platform that could help connect even a bigger audience. So with the other culture workers and artists, we started art forum that help people to exchange their experience and knowledge on country level. It happened in Sarajevo last summer, and there are two main goals with this project. One is educational and discussion activities, and the second goal is to involve young people from high school in creative practice. So these three projects they help to create some kind of new space that would help artists really in one way try, but in another way avoid really slow process in a culture institution. And I see this as some kind of building a new system for artists and culture workers, because when I explored it's really easier to build something new than to change something that already exists. So this art forum really helped artists from diaspora to connect with their home country and to learn about some projects and art practice from the artists who are living in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And after starting and working on these three projects, I really during this pandemic, I realized that there is also something else needed. And when I was reflecting on past, I realized that I also started one project 5 years ago that is more related to nature and agriculture and cultivation. So this project for me also has opportunity to bring more attention to some kind of research beyond contemporary art practice. It has a possibility to combine many different things, and that is looking at some kind of plants in nature that could help to realize what is resiliency and how we can move forward as creators and artists combine many different practice. And with this project, I started this project 5 years ago with farmers in one small village. There we are planting this calabash gourds, and when I researched a little bit more, I realized this kind of plants is really spread on all 4 continents. And with this project, I even want to involve a bigger community in creative practice. And when we speak about resiliency, what does it even mean to build a resiliency with art and culture? It is all about collaborating and trying to connect many different disciplines. And with these projects that I started, I really wanted to go beyond exhibiting in art galleries or museums or that kind of institution. I really wanted to see what else is possible when you brainstorm, when you try to think more freely, and when you try to move beyond certain narratives that are dominant. And for the last few months, I realized that to be able to develop something, you really need some kind of container, like some kind of space where you can when you can have the time to reflect, also to think about what does it even mean to be a creative person. And all these questions that I was thinking about for the last few months, I realized that that art and creativity is really something that can unite all other things. And without this kind of practice, I even think that it couldn't be possible to build community. And for that reason, I started to research what other people who are coming from these kind of countries like Bosnia and Herzegovina, what they are doing in terms of creating new spaces. And that is how I figure out about this post-collapse art that Ilknur and Vuslat founded, and that is how we started to collaborate on this topic of post-collapse artists and that kind of practice. And that's it.
Thank you very much, Mirela. Very fascinating. And next we have Mariya Tsaneva. I hope I'm pronouncing your last name right.
Exactly. Okay. So I want to, in the question of identity, my biggest topic of research is history. I grew up in Sofia in Bulgaria, but I spent the last 4 years in Vienna. I'm always in between the two places, but and my interest is always back to where I come from. So that's why a lot of the projects that I'm doing are related to Sofia and Bulgaria. So now I want to introduce to you one location in the city of Sofia, which was developed in the 60s. But before that, I want to say very quickly about Bulgaria, that Bulgaria in its modern history was part of a lot of different political projects. During the Cold War, it was part of the communist bloc. Then in 2004, joined NATO. In 2007, became member of the European Union. This is the map of Sofia, and Sofia is a growing city that constantly, and its infrastructure, a lot of its infrastructure developed also during the communist period. But after the changes and the change of the political system in 1989, a lot of public buildings were abandoned or remained with low activity. Now they're undergoing urban transformations due to investments and optimizations of their functions. And to explain this big process, I focused on one building. This is a complex of 3 sports buildings, but I will concentrate on this one, which is on the right side, which is called ASICS Arena. ASICS Arena is Stadion Academic, and on the other side is the unfinished covered swimming pool for students. So this is an area that started developing, somehow never managed to reach its end. So this is ASICS Arena. The building was renovated in 2017. On the right side is the image of ASICS Arena. Totally, the building was carrying the name Festival Hall 68 because it was built in that year for the 9th World Festival for youth and students. And I have chosen, as I said, because it symbolizes a larger tendency to neglect the past, dialogue around the problematic period of the communist time. From these pictures, it is visible how the new renovation has transformed the architecture of the building, cutting all ties with the rich but politically charged history of the building. ASICS Arena is a multifunctional sports hall. Training and athletic competitions were held for the years. The sports hall has witnessed a bunch of outstanding achievements and records important for the Bulgarian as well as for the international athletes. And the events served both athletics as well as communist political time. This is the architecture. Even though very often the architectural projects were politically driven, buildings like ASICS have value in the architecture, in the Bulgarian architecture. The building is planned by architect Ivan Tatarov and architect Doncho Vodishki, and it was designed as an accent and a distinctive monument on the hill of the district. The architectural solution is visible concrete structural system, which includes windows, which makes the building one of a kind. It is one of the earliest examples of brutalist architecture in Bulgaria, and the original design is part of a lot of cuts and booklets dedicated to architecture nowadays. Triggered by the history of the site, I decided to focus on the following: how buildings impact our lives, what kind of knowledge is encoded in the architecture that surrounds us, and how does the city relate globally, or they do not. So as I've mentioned, the building was built especially for the World Festival of Youth and Students in the summer of 1968. The event, the festival was supported by the program of the festival was emphasizing on different sports events and entertaining programs which spread the city of Sofia. The festival by posters, booklets, souvenirs, so that the guests can get a strong presence of the festival already from the beginning of the year. So a little bit about the festival. Besides its architectural value, this building carries also a rich history. The first festival of this kind, the first World Festival, took place in Prague in 1947, and it was an event of global youth solidarity against war and imperialism. And 8 years later, in 1968, the festival brought around 20,000 people from 130 countries with 11 is Soviet modernism around the young, among young people. The festival is a global forum of youth and students for athletic and artistic competition based on political discussions with large conferences. The motto of this festival in 1968 was peace and friendship, and main topic that united the participants, the solidarity of world youth with the people and youth of Vietnam. It's very important that the festival is 2 years before the armies of the Warsaw Pact, including the People's Republic of Bulgaria, entered the territory of Czechoslovakia to suppress the mass protests and new political liberalization that was taking place. The Prague Spring is one of the political events that were questioning the established Soviet model of socialism, and the main aim of the festival was to bring back the importance of the political project.
Mariya,
so for the festival, yeah.
I'm so sorry to interrupt, but we're having, I think, a little bit of bandwidth issue where you are getting choppy. So I wonder if I could ask everyone, including yourself, to turn off the camera while you're presenting, but please keep yourself unmuted so we can still hear you. And maybe that can help with the...
Okay, I stay with my camera on.
No, if you could also turn it off, it might help.
I just don't know, from this view now, it's a little bit different.
Or we could try with you streaming and the rest of us would be muted with their video. Okay.
I think I don't know how to switch to this. My video. If I make this, no, it's not closing my camera.
I might be able to do it on my...
Oh yeah, I saw it. Okay, now I know how.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I found it. Okay. Good. Then I make the screen bigger again. Yeah. Just to conclude about the festival, because it was very politicized, so long as everyone marched and sang, the spectacle worked and solidarity functioned. But at international seminars, such structures didn't work. In a lot of them, different points of view were occurring, but very often they were ignored, or even in some cases, participants were leaving the seminar halls. Free speech had collided with the communist orthodox rituals. This event has an important role in the understanding of global politics on a local level. And it is a good example that represents the resilience of national identity dominated by international spirit. After the hall was renamed, the athletic hall on the second floor officially opened, but the site, the building itself continued its renovation process, which is still ongoing. The north facade and the main entrance are covered with new materials, which are corresponding with the aesthetic of the restaurant, which uses more than half of the first floor and the public area around the building, which includes also the parking place. The south facade is abandoned, but right now it shows most of the original construction of the building. From these photos, it is visible how the new renovation overtakes the ground floor and blocks the windows. These pictures are from the interior of the hall. The one on the left is the new athletic hall, which was not in use for several years until it was renovated in 2000. Then it's in use every day. This is the only covered sports hall for athletes in Sofia right now. Next to it is a picture of one of the training halls that under renovation. From this picture, it is visible that there are signs and from the past. This is a double portrait of Bulgarian Todor Zhivkov and Leonid Brezhnev, which is probably, or it could be, from the time of the World Festival. The last picture is the first floor, which is a common area part of the restaurant. Part of my research, as I did during my art residency in Sofia in 2019. And it's a good possibility for me to bring together international and local audience and introduce the current and historical background. So I will
And we will see when we go there. I'm planning to read more on site because it's too
So with this kind of artistic walks and urban explorations, I emphasize on historical story. I emphasize on the history, and historical storytelling is for me very interesting. I want to encourage the audience to think, not just watch history, but participate in it. The important things for me are in the small details, the music, the archival materials, the presence of artifacts and so on. My idea of a Hawaii experience came from the historical context of the festival, which I combined with the current state of the site, the aesthetics of the restaurant and its diverse interior and exterior changes are creating new kind of international spirit for the place. The performative act creates an unexpected situation that triggers a new kind of connection with the site, and by paying attention on these details, I want to engage the audience in active participation and engagement with the urban changes. The urban exploration I see as a platform for exchange. With this project, I wanted to introduce the importance of urban history for our current and future life. Buildings can emphasize history as an important element for the understanding of local issues, part of global picture. Urban transformations are the changes that are questioning our history, and we are shape ourselves and are shaped in return by the building environment. There is a liberation in shutting the door behind us. So we walk out and superstitiously believe that the ugly memories from the past will not find us, but memory is fundamental for our self-awareness and how much and to what extent the memory of a certain will be projected. Architect Tsaneva speaks about the brutalist architecture in Bulgaria from 2019. There is still a building in Bulgaria after 1945 and has the status of a real cultural heritage. Memory is an act of moral and responsibility that must be manifested towards the environment and the buildings from the second half of the 20th century. Yeah, that was.
Thank you so much. I think everyone can turn on their mics again. This was really fascinating discussion. It was a little choppy and some parts I couldn't hear. I'm not sure if everyone else could as well, but one suggestion is maybe you could record your 15-minute presentation and upload it so that our panel has 2 video entries, and if the conference organizers can also make that available in case viewers were unable to hear some parts of your presentation, that additional video could help. So from everything I heard, brilliant. Thank you, Mariya. Last but not least, we have Stefka Hristova.
Thank you, everyone. I will be talking about algorithmic art in the context of Bulgaria, and I'll be talking about an artist that I absolutely adore and her collaborative work in algorithmic culture. And before I begin, I really appreciate other presentations and other perspectives you bring, because you're really pointing to the ways in which we have this clash of and weaving of influences, right? As we're thinking about East and West and the boundaries in between, and how West influences perceptions of art in the East, and how what's considered to be East fuels perceptions of art into the West. And I find this to be a very important point of discussion, especially in moved into new forms of technology such as algorithmic art, because the idea that's professed most commonly in the West is that algorithmic art has a Western trajectory. It's mostly driven by Western artists, and I think that it's an area that needs to be contextualized much more as an international endeavor rather than as a purely Western articulation. That said, I want to introduce you to the work of Albena Baeva. I wanted to speak about the significance of her work, because I think it's speaking to a lot of points that we are trying to grapple with out here. And I'm speaking as a digital media theorist in an American university, not as a practitioner, but as someone who sees the value of work done outside of the States as a commentary, as offering invaluable perspectives to our own articulation of what we're experiencing in this particular moment. So the title of my talk is Affective Assemblages, Facial Recognition and the Search for Love. And I want to talk a little bit about the ways in which algorithmic technology is changing perception of intimacies, perceptions of love, perceptions of affection, To do this through a 2016 project by the Bulgarian artist Albana Bayeva in collaboration with Irena Beckman. And here I'll introduce one of their projects, which is called In Love, where there's a robot, and her name is kind of Aya. She's a small bot that has a facial recognition camera and professes love to her audiences, and I'll show you what the project looks like. And to talk about the ways in which this project brings together issues about the camera's position, about surveillance, about love, about technology infusing everyday life, and how it offers a multi-layered, multilingual affective engagement that we don't necessarily see in a lot of the mainstream discourses about either technology or algorithmic culture. So I think it's a very important intervention that they're making. So a little bit about Bayeva. She's an amazing artist and a wonderful human who works at the intersection of art, technology, and social science. She engages with ML, which is machine learning and artificial intelligence, or algorithms, as well as physical computing, creative coding, and DIY spaces. I encourage you to check out her website and her profile at albanabayeva.com. Her work is really fantastic. She is also the co-founder of the Roundabout Project, a platform for new performance instruments, the Student Interactive Design Group Reactive, and Gallery in Sofia. So she's just a proponent of the arts, as well as very much a prolific artist herself. So Aya is a 2016 project that I absolutely adore. It's an interactive installation created out of discarded technology. It uses an old webcam, and the webcam is tiny, as well as a facial recognition algorithm to try to make eye contact with the visitor. And when it does that, it starts reciting fragments of a text by a Serbian writer called Milorad Pavic, and turns them into a monologue of inequated love. So the camera follows the audience, and the moment it sees a face match, it stops, and then it narrates the Serbian text translated into Bulgarian in a female voice until the person leaves. So I wanted to show you what Aya looks in action, and I will switch my share screen to my browser to avoid hopefully drag. Let's see. Nope. Just a moment, sorry. Okay. Share. Okay. So here 30 seconds of Aya interacting with Albana and asking very important questions, which I'll translate in a second, but it's questions about otherness and humanity. Sorry about that. I'm switching back to the presentation. Okay. So you get a sense of the process. The action is equally as creative as the programming itself, as the code is written in processing, and it presents 3 stages of love. So the code itself is connected to this idea of intimacy, of poetics, and it looks like a looping love affair. And this idea of a loop comes constantly. So this is kind of an overview of the project, and I'll talk a little bit about why I think it's so amazing. So Aya was part of a larger exhibit, which was called kind of like a smaller entertaining creatures, if I'm going to translate this, Malki Zabavne Sozdanja, in which the objects that were chosen were systematically smaller than humans. They were meant to be a smaller scale. And then through this construction, we have this idea of emerging as a feminized object. Aya is not Big Brother, right? When we think about surveillance in the United States, we think about Big Brother, these overarching state structures that kind of dominate us. And Aya is small, she's feminized, she's vulnerable, she's lonely and fragile, she's outdated, she's outmoded, she's discarded. So it presents a very different affective structure to technology, which I think offers kind of a really important counterpoint to the dominant paradigms that we are experiencing out here. Another point that Aya brings is this notion of affective labor. And in the contemporary moment, artificial intelligence has been deployed as matchmakers between humans who are seen as unable to recognize love in and of themselves. For example, if you're using a dating app out here, anything from Tinder to Bumble, anything in the space, your face is being evaluated and you're given a score, usually by people who are working through the Amazon's Mechanical Turk. And then you're matched with people who are equally beautiful or ugly as you are. And so the algorithm kind of acts as a matchmaker. And AI has been deployed very heavily in China and Japan right now. It's servicing China's lonely man. And it's used in Japan to try to increase birth rate because clearly people are unable to find matches. And this whole idea of matchmaking, right, has a cultural component in lots of cultures where this was the job of family, right? That family played a crucial role in matching with potential partners. And now this has been displaced to artificial intelligence structures. And then we have to deal with this idea of electronic personhood because through Aya, Bayeva and Beckman evoke the work of Graham Harman and the tradition of thought of object-oriented ontology. Here, the questions of objects and the art objects in particular are entangled with political landscape of the European Union, where we have questions about electronic personhood initiatives coming almost in contrast or in tension with the inhumane treatment of migrants, with the migrant crisis. So as we're trying to think about these post-humanist creations or creatures as persons or having personhoods, having emotions, being affective, being fragile, when you think about this moment as being part of a larger political and economic structure in which personhood is being denied to so many. So I just want to kind of outline this tension as well. So we're dealing with collapse of idea of personhood and at the same time displacement of personhood onto objects that are non-human. So to conclude, I want to point to 4 failures of translation that Aya points to. Aya points to the question of translation and transference, and the first point where this happens is in the name itself. So Aya is in Bulgarian will be the first and the last letter of the alphabet, so it's a loop system, right? It's the whole premise of Aya is a circulation, and it's lost in the translation from A to Z, right? So it will be AZ or Aya, right? In English it will be AZ. And that's one of the places where Aya becomes lost as a loop or a sequence in the translation of language itself. The code becomes poetry, dramatizing 3 actions: the setup, the question whether desire is appropriate, as well as the fear of abandonment. And the code itself cannot be written in Bulgarian, it can only be written in English. So there's an inability to articulate this desire in the language in which it's spoken, which is Bulgarian translating Serbian, which is the next point. Aya is professing her love through a remix of works, and the Dictionary of the Kazarks is particularly important here because it's a very important Serbian work which has a female and a male version and with the text, and there's only one paragraph that makes a distinguish female or male. And the book is always professed with a female voice because this is a constraint of the Bulgarian software development. They didn't have a male voice that speaks or translates Bulgarian into Bulgarian voice at this particular moment. So Aya will pick between the male or the female version of the text randomly, but she always had to profess with a female voice because of the technical limitation of not having a male Bulgarian voice. Another kind of question about the feminization of technology and that we have been grappling with Alexa and Google Assistant and your Siri, right? So it speaks to the biases that gender steal technology. And last but not least, I think it's important to think about the role of AI as mediating the human-to-human search or the human-to-human loop, human-in-the-loop systems, right? And the ways in which she almost hijacks love and emerges as this technological creature that itself seeks love and seeks affection and breaks the chain or breaks the loop, breaks the established loop, both coded as well as culturally constructed loop, by interfering and saying, well, actually, I would like to be the recipient of love myself and not pass it on to the next human. So no longer acting as a mediator, but the end point and kind of a very active end point in articulating romance. So I hope that you explore more of Baeva's work, but I think that engaging with artists from across different perspectives and across global regions is really crucial in order to challenge dominant and normative narratives about what art is, what culture is, how technology functions, and I think that we need those perspectives. They're crucial to our contemporary moment. So thank you. I will stop share.
Thank you so much, and what a wonderful presentation to end on, right? From identity to community to history, and now we have the post-human future. I guess in our panel we have time to have a conversation. I would very much like to hear from each of you and putting the different areas of your research and practice in communication with one another, and not necessarily through the framework of post-collapse, but also like to think about what that might mean to think about, as you all said, identity and history and cultural memory in a new framework that helps us kind of push the boundaries of Eurocentric contemporaneity. So maybe we can take about 10 minutes, and maybe if I can get us started, I think that one current one thread I see as a connection between all of your presentations is this idea of co-laboring, right? Collaboration as co-laboring, as working together as individuals and members of a community, but also as individuals who are seeking to find a space of connection and community, right? Either in a physical geographic space or as migrants trying to find that new space of connection, but also with the very last presentation, right? As the kind of the humanism beyond humanism in a digital space, and the connections, that new intimacies, right? New working togethers, new positions of self. Any thoughts on that? Would anyone like to get us started? And let's take about 10 minutes. So we have until 40. And feel free to unmute and talk.
Okay, I will also pause recording right now. There.
So the questions about working together, or how we can come up with a new framework of understanding individuality, human as an individual in terms of an identity and the categories that help compose it in a new light. So beyond, I think it was in a couple of different presentations, so otherness and humanity, right? Especially in Stefka, your presentation, you talked about identity and questions of, for example, gender, race, ethnicity, but then how to move beyond those to rethink humanism. And I also am thinking about Mirela's presentation as really community-based practice, right? The role of the artist in community, but also as an endeavor to create new spaces of working together, just to get us started. So any thoughts would be on that topic?
Well, I guess I'll go first, if that's okay. I just volunteered myself. I was also listening to everything and taking notes. One of the things that I did notice was how Mirela is so active in so many different platforms. And I know in my own practice as like this Turkish American immigrant in the United States, I know that, and also the subject matter of the art that I do is a very like focused, like very tight niche, where I realized because of that I need an outlet and a space. By the nature of the work that I do, I realized that there is no platform to show this work. There is also not much an audience, despite having the Turk be plastered all over pop culture and history and literature, that my critical engagement for it does not really have such, it's kind of understood as, that's the Turk trope, that, deal with it. So and I realized like that was one of the driving factors in which that I, realized, well then, this is historically how artists have always done. They came up with their artist-run space. When they realized there was no space for them to show their work, they created the space. So when I look at Mirela's work, and she has so many different platforms, and I noticed that one of the challenges that she listed was the bureaucracy and limitation of having not enough experience in collaboration and not enough experience in the country in running spaces. But one of the, and lack of resources, of course, is usually, something that plagues artists. But one thing she said was the limitation of the imposed narrative, which I find myself also as one of the limitations in finding outlets for my own work, was the imposed narrative, which ironically my work actually tries to address directly. So my question was not so much of a question, but kind of wanting to ask what that imposed narrative is for a Bosnian artist, and how does it limit, like a little bit more?
It is related to a recent conflict in the Bosnia and the region, and also it almost like artists are asked to maintain that kind of story, and some younger artists, many artists, they are living in communities where they have been listened to that kind of stories for years, and sometimes they really want about war and survival. But some artists, they do not want to speak about that anymore. And some younger artists as well, they haven't experienced that because it happened 30 years ago. And some of them, they are really interested in aesthetics, or maybe technology, or maybe new media, and they want to build their own view of the world, not only to be part of that kind of story about being a victim and that kind of narrative. And they want to explore something different, not to maintain history that is interested by other, by other who are looking at the country from the outside, because local knowledge is something that is a little bit different than knowledge of the people who are running this bigger foundation and who are interested in some kind of peace building. But peace is there. We don't need to propose some kind of projects for peace building. That's my personal opinion, but I was in conversation with many other artists who are interested in something else. So I hope this answers your question.
Thank you.
Yeah, and to Mirela's point, I think that there is an expectation about the work we do and the work we discuss, and it comes with kind of, I think, almost a stereotyping about what art from a particular place should mean, what art from a particular place should look, how art from a particular place should engage with the rest of the world. And for me, the worry comes with engagement with the kind of the academic or the art historical canon, like in terms of what histories get recorded, what stories get told, and what margins are we actively creating in this particular moment, or what margins are we perpetuating, right? What identities are we cementing in the art histories that we are actively creating?
Yeah, that's an excellent point. It also reminds me of Mariya, the video you showed at the end, right? When I could kind of see the panorama of the building with all the graffiti and the rubble, it really looked like this sort of defiant place, right? But instead of maybe the political push to erase the building of its politically charged past, that maybe also, as Ilknur said in her presentation, that kind of the graffiti and the rubble and the insistence on being there and being present in the space, right, is accentuating it, this hyper accentuation as a new way of participating in the past, right? Not as erasure, not as this never happened kind of a thing, but here it is, right? And the presentism of the is, right, pointing towards a new kind of a subversive but also creative and a resilient future.
Yeah, definitely. I think the layers are something that is very present and important. For me, it is interesting how we can put together and explore these processes as a complex thing. And for me, this I think I can relate this. This idea of a global demand for the local as also something that also from the local point of view you should also adjust to the global sometimes, and I see some of the changes in the urban space also as a reflection of this adjustment and this strive for also trying to be also part. So it's not only from out to from the big to the small, but it's also from the small to the big.
Yeah, speaking of that, the shifts and the positions of, small, big, it's really interesting how Stefka, you said that this is what is the Bulgarian term of, again? You said the small human, the malinka. I'm not going to pretend I know it.
I think it's small and it's small entertaining creatures or small
entertaining creatures, right?
That would be my rough translation.
versus the big brother, right? The masculine big brother, as you presented it. But is this really sort of humorous, ironic take on the capacity of the technology, right? As a small creature, the smallness of it, the minor, not the minority position, right? But the minor position that it places it in. For construction of new intimacies, which again also reminds me of Ilknur's fantastic Turks, right? Like taking the ethnic minority and turning it into some sort of an organization, a force, an international force, right? But one that does not, I guess, promote the Big Brother version. Any thoughts on that?
The fantastic Turks. Sorry.
I saw some of the connections, but I wonder what you were all thinking.
Well, what's wrong with my voice? The Fantastic Turks was the project that I did in response to the organization in the video game, where video game characters were the kind of like the private CIA serving a corporation. And my take on that was, like thinking about it in perspective, the game was made in late 90s and image of the Turk takes different functions throughout different decades and different centuries. And I was thinking like, often the criticism of United States wars driven in the Middle East are corporate driven. They're for oil. And the company they serve in the game is called Electric and Power Company. So I was wondering if this was kind of a jab at the corporation being the United States and Turkey being its ally in the Middle East, going and fighting every war as a United States ally, but somehow still maintaining this villain and enemy position, like despite being an ally and despite fighting every war that is fought in the Middle East, taking, and still, you know, you turn on the television and there's like Midnight Express in your face. It's like, you know, I was wondering if this was kind of like the Japanese tongue-in-cheek critique that somehow made its way into the game.
Mm-hmm. We do have a couple of more minutes if you all have any other thoughts that I didn't get to.
Maybe it's not related to any of these presentation, but when I researched more about culture institution in the USA and even world, I was really surprised how much energy, money, time, and everything is needed to manage and maintain our history and culture from the past and archives and everything else. So I'm really curious. What do you think? What would happen in the future with the technology and its progress? Do you think it would help to build archives easier, even for example, for individual artists, or I don't know, what do you think about that? Because we at this moment we are also participating in recording and uploading our videos. So I don't know, any thoughts on that?
Stefka, would you like to take this one, actually? Any thoughts on this, or what would maybe the artist's take on this would be, the artist that you're working with?
I mean, it's interesting to think about, as we're getting into more technological landscapes, what voices get lost. I think it's a very important question to ask, and what voices get preserved, because in algorithmic future, the material that's preserved, the artifacts that are on the margin get excluded, and there's a tendency towards homogenization and kind of professing of coherence. So I think it's really important to have the voices that are traditionally marginalized preserved in digital spaces, especially as algorithms learn how to generate art in and of themselves and find themselves in Western traditions, because I think that we'll see acceleration of the erasure of multiplicity of identities as GAN networks take on notions of creativity. At least this is where I see the dangers of having an incomplete archive.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you all so much for participating in this on a Sunday. We're not out of the pandemic yet, so I especially appreciate everyone's hard work during this extra demanding times, and I really appreciate hearing your presentations. So we'll have the live Q&A again Saturday, February, what was it? I think it was February 3rd at 3 p.m. I did say it in the beginning, and it will be posted on the CAA.
The correct time.
So I look forward to continuing the conversation then. Thank you again very much. Wonderful presentations.
Thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure to be on this panel together.
Thank you so much. Me too.
Thank you.
Have a great day.